On today's Locked On Predators podcast, we're going to tell you the one thing Barry Trotz can do to make us forget all about last season's pain.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. We are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to kick off this episode with a heartfelt shout out to our Locked On Predators insider community and to our everydayers who tune in to talk Nashville Predators hockey with us. I'm Ann Kimmel. I'm a writer and co-host with Penalty Box Radio, and friends, I have a partner in crime.
You do. I'm Emma Lingan, and I'm an NHL reporter and host with the Hockey News.
This week, Emma and I are spending time asking and answering 3 questions about key pieces in the Predators franchise. We are kicking it off today discussing Barry Trotz. Today, we are going to ask and try to answer whether Barry Trotz is done making moves this offseason, what his biggest mistakes and best moves as general manager have been so far, and if a successful future will be enough to overlook the pain of the 84-year season we just sat through. Before we dive into all of that, do want to let you know this episode is brought to you by our friends at Monarch Money. Take control over your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. All right, Emma, 3 questions about, look, we have way more than 3 questions about a lot of things when it comes to the Nashville Predators, but we're trying to stay focused. And today we're dialing in on general manager Barry Trotz. And again, more than 3 questions, but we're going to concentrate our efforts to try to see where we think he is. We're going to kick it off with this particular offseason. So we're going to start small and expand out. Question 1, what else can Barry Trotz do to put together a more competitive roster for this coming season? Is there anything he could do? Is there anything you think he will do to change the roster and make it more competitive going into next season, Emma? For the love of God, help us.
Honestly, no. And I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. You know, the worst thing, and we've talked about this before, the last thing you want to do is overcorrect if something went horribly. And again, I'm not saying that last season was for sure just an anomaly, but we have every reason to believe right now. We have no reason to believe that it's not. So I think you don't want to be too reactionary. You don't want to overcorrect. There's also, again, with the way it's constructed with contracts and whatnot, there's not a whole lot you can do. But I think, as far as things that could make this roster better, what do you need? You needed to fix the defense. Yes. On paper, he did that. He did that. You need center depth. Didn't really do that. But at the same time, if you're asking me this question right now, is there anything he could do to fix that?
Yeah.
No, not really. So it's be mad at Barry Trotz all you want, and there are plenty of valid reasons to be mad at him. But if the reason you're mad at him is because he didn't fix the center depth this offseason, I don't really know what to tell you, because I don't know how he was going to do that.
Yeah, the market is what the market is. And you, in theory, can go out and you can overpay. But there really wasn't even a wide selection of centers to go out and overpay for. What's on the shelf is what's on the shelf. And it is very obvious that Nashville, the center depth is kiddie pool. At best, it's kiddie pool. People talk about, is Nashville going to add another player? They have about $10 million in cap space as of the time of this recording. As of the time of this recording, they're still working to sign a contract with Luke Evangelista, so that'll factor in. But they have a little bit of money to spend. But I agree with you. At some point, you got to figure out what you have before you keep throwing sugar in the dough to make it sweeter. We talked this offseason. I would have loved a little Marco Rossi, but the way the contracts are going, just sitting back and watching that negotiation with Minnesota, I would not offer sheet that for anything. First of all, Minnesota has been like peeing in a circle around him, like, you offer sheet and we're going to match it. Okay, well, all right. Also, the contracts that he's turned down are about what I would be willing to pay for somebody. You don't want to lock yourself into a long term. So, like, there's a player that people are like, what about this guy? Would love to have him here. Again, it's just not practical. And I don't know that we are a Marco Rossi away from contention in the Central Division. He has thrown his chips in on defense. I think it's interesting that he threw his chips in. And again, part of this is market. He is banking on players getting a new opportunity and rising to the occasion in a new place with Nick Hague and Nick Perbix, the Nick squared. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how that works out. I also think we have to figure out what is real about this season's Steven Stamkos, this season's Jonathan Marchessault. We have to leave space for Fedor Svechkov to stay on the ice and learn this season. And so while I would love to see a prettier roster on paper, I just don't know that there's a lot Barry Trotz is going to do or should do to make it more attractive. Do you remember how excited we were about the roster on paper at the beginning of last season? Do you remember the joy, Emma? It's so vague.
It's fleeting. Always so fleeting. Sorry, I'm still stuck on the image of, I'm just picturing Bill Guerin peeing in a circle around Marco.
Isn't that what it feels like though? Like, don't touch my territory.
You're so right. You're so right. I'm just like, wow, what a visual. I need to get that out of my head. Okay. But no, I think, yes, I agree. I think what's funny, I mean, maybe not haha funny, maybe it's a little too soon to laugh, but like what's ironic is that people were begging for Barry Trotz, or for the Nashville Predators, not for Barry Trotz because he was new at the time, but for the Nashville Predators as a franchise to take the big swing, do the things. Well, he did, and it went horribly, at least in the immediate term. And so now everyone's upset that he's not taking more big swings. And it's like, well, I don't know that we want to necessarily fight fire with fire right now. Like I said, you don't want to overcorrect, but I don't think that this particular offseason would have been the time in this market. Like, this is not the market that you want to overspend on, because it really was kind of a dud of a market this year.
Not exciting.
Agency and like trades, like, I don't know. It was kind of, unless you're like Mitch Marner, and we knew the Preds weren't getting Mitch Marner, nor should they have, mind you. But I just think that, I don't know, that like, I understand. I think being upset about the team's, like needs or lack of center depth, for example, totally valid complaint. But being upset that like, oh, the reason that the center depth is so bad is because like, oh, because Barry Trotz was too passive this offseason. It's like, no,
that's not real.
No.
Yeah. That's
what
not
more
real.
could he have done? Realistically, what more could he have done?
Yeah. I mean, you can only shop what's on the shelves. And you can only trade for what is a smart long-term move for the Nashville Predators as well. Because remember, he is balancing two things. He's the center of the seesaw, trying to balance two things. Coming up, we're going to talk about that seesaw. What if the now side of that seesaw does not pan out? We're going to ask and answer how important the success of the not yet end will be to Trotz's future and his legacy. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Monarch Money. Do you ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you are growing your savings or planning for a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It is like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is so much more than just a budgeting app. It is a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, your investments, and your spending in one place. So, in addition to managing your money, you are also building wealth. Monarch Money is a great tool for young adults just learning to manage their finances, and it makes financial collaboration even easier. Partners can stay on the same page with investments, spending, and working towards that financial goal, all without the extra stress. Take control over your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. All right, Emma, we are asking and trying to answer three big questions about Barry Trotz, and we're going to talk about the now and not yet. If, and we'll see what happens this season, and expectations are tempered, but if the now portion of Barry Trotz's plan fails miserably, what has to happen in the not yet portion of Barry Trotz's plan as general manager to make it considered successful and worth it?
I mean, worth it? A Stanley Cup?
Yeah.
I mean,
Ultimately.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know that you're gonna have luck, and I don't mean you, I mean you as in Barry Trotz, are gonna have any luck convincing fans that this was worth it. If unless you have this like dynamite core that is coming. Like again, there are other teams, like for example, we've talked about San Jose a lot. We
Mhm.
know that San Jose is not a contender right now, and that's okay. But you can see what's cooking there. You can
Mhm.
see what the plan is. Right now, I don't look at anyone, quite frankly, maybe one or two players, but I don't look at Nashville as having that core group that's like, okay, yeah, it sucks right now, but they're coming. The good
Yes.
guys are coming. And it's like, ooh, I don't know. And so if you're asking, like what does the not yet portion have to look like? I think it's got to look like some trades.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's so funny because you talk about a Stanley Cup is the goal, which it of course always is, but I think you have to even aim, you got to at least hit the first benchmark of this team has to be competitive in 3 to 5 seasons. You have, and Barry Trotz, for all of the things that he has done that cause us angst, and we're going to talk about that in the next segment, he has done a good job of not costing Nashville the future to try to make something happen now. He has done a good job of that, and that is not an easy thing. He has not gone so all in that there isn't hope down the line. But I am telling you that something really good has to start happening in 3 to 5 seasons. The way that you transition into the not yet, I think, is going to involve some moves by Barry Trotz, and they're going to have to be strategic, smart. I think how you transition out of the now is also going to be really important because Barry Trotz is going to have to jettison some contracts, probably, to transition this team into a successful not yet without more baggage, whether it's cap space or whatever. And he cannot lump in quality prospects to jettison a veteran. Like he's going to have to move out of the now very successfully. He's also going to have to develop talent and draft well. And I think that that is something that Nashville Predators fans have a question about. Is Nashville able to develop talent well, especially at the forward position? I think, if you're talking about specific benchmarks. I think you have to be competitive in 3 to 5 years. That means you have to be competing for a division title. I think you have to be one of the top 5 teams, maybe in the Western Conference. You have to be hitting the playoffs every time. I think I think it's tough with the way things stand now. There are some really interesting prospects in the system, but you don't have a Macklin Celebrini. You don't have a Will Smith. You know what I'm saying? So you don't have a Michael Misa just hanging out. So yeah, I think it's got to be successful, and I don't think it's just going to happen with time. And I think maybe Predators fans need to brace themselves. Like, it's not just time that's going to make this not yet happen. There're going to be some pain and some moves.
I also think, like, I understand the idea both in the franchise and in the fan base, the idea to want to go for, like, you have this core group. Specifically, I'm talking guys like Roman Josi and UC Saros, guys who were there. Well, maybe not Saros, Roman Josi and Philip Forsberg. We'll go with them because, like, they were here for when they made that magical cup run, to the final in 2017. And I understand there's that desire to just want to give it one last go, give them another chance. I'm sorry. I don't think that's happening. I don't think that's happening for those guys. Maybe Forsberg. But here's what I'll say. Even if it does happen, they are not going to be like key centerpieces of that team. They
Which
are
is a
going to be
mind
fringe
shift.
pieces. Yeah. And so that's why I feel like this team is farther away maybe than a lot of people think they are. Just because, like, just shifting away from that idea of those guys being the centerpieces of the team. Not saying we have to shift away from it right now, because right now they are the centerpieces of the team, and that's fine. That's how it should be. But this kind of focus, that's why, again, I come back to, talking about the draft. And I really started to come around to the pick of Brady Martin because I saw what they're doing. I'm like, oh, this is their next captain. That maybe not their next captain, depending on how long Roman Josi plays, but this is their future. Like, talking about that future core, like, hey, the next wave is coming. This kid's at the center of it. And I get what they're doing. So I think that, unfortunately, that might mean that we have to brace for some more bad hockey, because you have your Brady Martin. Now you need like 2 or 3 other guys to kind of, build that core. And there are other ways to get them, but I'm just saying it's going to come with a lot of sacrifice, whether that sacrifice is cap space, whether the sacrifice is trading away valuable pieces, or whether the sacrifice is just being really bad at hockey for a few seasons. So you keep picking at the top of the draft. I mean, it's not easy. And I don't mean to, say that as though people who are listening don't already know that. But I think it's just, we are now starting to see that, oh, this team was not just a piece or two away from contending. They're actually quite a ways away.
What's so funny is I feel like last offseason, when you added Stamkos and Marchessault, there was that thought of like, okay, you know what? We have just added 2 pretty elite players, and this could be what pushes them over the top. And again, I don't think that we're going to necessarily see a repeat of just how horrible last season was. I mean, from my lips to the hockey god's ears. I mean, sweet baby. I don't know, man. It was so bad, you all. It was so bad. But I do think that you can't have blinders on anymore and say Nashville is a couple pieces away. The not yet will have to be a core. And then Barry Trotz is going to have to add pieces, but you're going to want the elite pieces already here. You're not going to want to go out and be like, we're really good. And with a Steven Stamkos, we're going to be a contender. You got to have those people here in your system and then add parts around that. And so Barry Trotz is going to have to add the right pieces at the right time, but the right pieces have to be in Nashville for a while before, to get this to be a core that can be a threat down the road. And it's a little bit scary. I agree with you about Brady Martin. And, this is what's real about this pick. Brady Martin, we are going to be watching Porter Martone. We are going to be watching James Higgins for a very long time and comparing it to Brady Martin. But there are some things, if statistically he is in their ballpark, there are some things about him that are intangibles that I think are about the not yet core. We're going to have to wait and see what happens. I don't know. I don't know at this point on this day. I don't know what to say about Nashville's chance for picking in the top 5 again next year. I have no idea. I don't know what to expect this season.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. You could tell me that they would, well, maybe not that extreme. I was going to say you could tell me they'd win the division. I would not believe that for a second.
That's
but
true.
you could tell me they're a playoff team next year and I'd say sure.
Mhm.
You could tell me that they finish in the bottom of the league again and I would say sure.
Yes.
That tracks. Either
Yep.
way. I could see it.
Yep.
And that's maybe a problem.
Yeah. Honestly, that to me is the signal of a bigger problem. I don't necessarily look at the roster on paper and go, ooh, that's a big problem. I sit and think, I have no idea what this roster can do. That's the problem. It's not the names on the paper. It's, I don't know if this can come together. There's a lot there to unpack, involving, head coach Andrew Brunette. We're going to be talking about 3 questions to ask about Andrew Brunette later on in this week. Coming up, we're going to wrestle with what has been Barry Trotz's biggest mistake so far and what has been his boldest move. We're going to wrestle with that coming up. All right, Emma, we have said this before on the podcast, and I really do stand by this. It is very hard to judge a general manager's performance in 2 seasons. Now, it's very easy to judge the team's performance in 2 seasons, but how much of that is Barry Trotz? How much of that is coaching? How much of that is players? How much of that is roster construction? You can get off in the jingweeds with that. But we're going to try to look at this time period of Barry Trotz in the big boy chair and wrestle with what do we think, what has been his biggest mistake so far, Emma?
I mean, maybe it's recency bias, but I think, and you know what? It's not just on him. I think all of us to a degree fell victim to the same line of thinking. But I think the biggest mistake is that he saw that 18-game point streak and got duped into thinking that this team was closer than they were. And kind of painted himself into a corner with the moves that he made. I also think that the moves that he made, being getting the Stamkos, Marchessault, Shea, doing all of that, does not, it went against everything that he had said that he was going to do. I think what happened was he had a plan. Now, then the team outperformed expectations and he deviated from the plan. And I think now he's realizing, oh, I should have stuck to the plan. Even if the circumstances change and, like the team surprises you, good or bad, you still have to stick to the plan. And I think that he deviated from that a little bit and then realized, immediately kind of came crashing back down to earth and was like, oh, because the plan made sense, in terms of like having a guy like Andrew Brunette as your head coach. That makes sense when the plan is to, kind of go with the youth and work on, maybe not contending right now, but we're going to build, we're still going to be competitive. We're not tanking, but like, we're still, we're going to be building, we're going with this younger, unproven coach, and we're going to be younger and faster. And, we're going to build up that way. That all made sense when that was the plan. But then you go and you bring in 3 guys in their 30s to be your new core. And it's like, well, now this doesn't make sense with the coaching hire that you made.
Yes.
Not saying one is good and one is bad, like, but they just don't go together. And so again, it kind of seemed like, I don't know, to me, maybe I'm overreaching and identifying a ton of things that are mistakes, but I think that's like the big overarching one, is that 18 game point streak caused him to deviate from the plan. Now, I'm sure he will never admit that until the day he
That will
dies,
never happen. Yes.
but it did.
Yeah.
It happened.
That is such a huge pivot. And I don't know that we talk about that enough in relationship to Barry Trotz, also in relationship to Andrew Brunette. And so we're going to put a pin in that. That is a huge pivot that happened because it was youth movement. It was, we're going to develop these young players around this core of Forsberg and Yossi and Saros. That is one path. And while long term, that's still the plan, such a huge pivot with bringing in Stamkos and Marchessault and Shea. And it's not just an existential pivot. It's a practical pivot because you now have taken up roster spots that were going to be for young players to develop. And I think a lot of us, I mean, I agree with you. I think this could be a really big mistake that Barry Trotz made, but how many of us fell under that? And I'm talking national media. When he signed Stamkos and Marchessault and Shea, national media was like, this team could be a sleeper cup contender. This team could be. So a lot of people bought into it. If that 18 game point streak had happened at the beginning of the season, I don't know that we would have believed it. But because it happened at the end of the season, it's easy to make the narrative, it finally clicked. It's going to work.
And it was right before the trade deadline too. And so you're thinking like, oh, it finally clicked. Like you said, they just needed time. They
yes,
just needed time. And now
with the
they're
new
here.
coach. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think it is so easy and I think obvious to make the assumptions that we made about, okay, yeah, it clicked. They finally got it. They get what Andrew Brunette is asking and they're able to execute it. And now we're going to bring in some goal scoring because that's all we need to be competitive. And that is not at all what panned out last season. I think we were all hoodwinked by an 18 game point streak. It was a hell of a lot of fun, you all. It was a hell of a lot of fun to cover. But I don't know if that was the mirage or not. Or maybe last season was the mirage. I don't know. Again, sure. What do you think is Barry Trotz's boldest move? And for me, I will tell you this. We already talked about it. I think his boldest move was Brady Martin so far. I think that was a very bold move. And I'm not saying, and again, love Brady Martin. I liked Brady Martin, from the get-go. I still think this is a bold move. And while I love what we saw from him at Dev Camp and watching him in conversations with him, seeing him play, I feel much better about the pick. It's still a big swing. And I'm not sure if it's going to foul out or if it's going to, be a home run. Look at me slapping down the baseball slang here like I'm Emma Lingan. I am not.
But you're nailing it. You're nailing it.
Look at me. Look at growth before y'all's very eyes when it comes to my baseball.
That's a bold one. I mean, again, I go back to it's the obvious answer, but I mean, last offseason, making those signings because everyone was saying, like, well, it would be such a coup if Nashville could get one of Steven Stamkos or Jonathan Marchessault. They can't get them both, but wouldn't it be great if they could get one? Well, you know what? They got both. It's hard to think of it this way because, like, obviously different circumstances, different teams. It was longer ago, but same kind of idea how everyone was saying, oh, well, the Florida Panthers this year, they can't afford to keep Ekblad, Bennett, and Marchand. It'll be 2, but not 3. Well, you know what? They got all 3. Now they're still like $3 million over the cap and they're going to have to do something about that. But the point is, like, people were saying the same thing about Nashville and getting those pieces. And it's like,
Mhm.
well, Nashville is usually a much more conservative team when it comes to those moves, those signings. And he did the thing. And, I'm not necessarily defending it, saying it was the best move to make. I mean, hindsight's 2020, but I think that just the fact that he picked a direction. In doing that, he picked a direction because no one knew what this team was going to do. It
Mhm.
was like, well, we're either going to tank and rebuild or we're going to go for it and try to win. Well, under David Poyle, they really weren't picking a direction. They were just kind of staying right down the middle.
Mhm.
He
Very
took them in
true.
a direction, may have been the wrong one, but he picked one.
We'll see how
Mhm.
we're feeling, when December rolls around, January, February, the trade deadline. Yep, we'll just see how we feel then. So, there are still a lot of questions about Barry Trotz being the general manager of the Nashville Predators. Still need some time to get a bigger picture of it. But those are our thoughts on where things stand with Barry Trotz and those three questions right now. Let us know what you think about Barry Trotz as general manager in his first 2 seasons. Do you think that he has done enough? What are his biggest mistakes and his biggest successes? Let us know in the comments of this YouTube video. You can also let us know on social media. You can find the podcast on Twitter at LO_Predators. Before we log off today, Emma, will you let everyone know where they can find you and your work online?
Yes, you can find me on social media at Emma_Lingan, and you can find my work at the Hockey News.
You can find me online at AnnK_Mama on Ice. You can find my work with Penalty Box Radio as well. Friends, that's going to do it for today's episode of the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. Join us again later this week where we wrestle with 3 big questions about Andrew Brunette. We'll see you then.